Have you ever found yourself sitting at your desk, knowing exactly what needs to be done, but instead of working, you're endlessly scrolling through your phone? You're thinking about the work, stressing over deadlines, and telling yourself you'll start in 5 minutes. But 5 minutes turn into an hour. Sound familiar? What if I told you that this loop of thinking without doing is more common than you realize? And breaking it isn't about forcing yourself to work harder, but about rewiring your mind to act with purpose and focus. Why do we get stuck in this cycle? Why is it so easy to scroll mindlessly and so hard to take action? If you've ever found yourself trapped between wanting to be productive and actually getting things done, today's topic is for you. We're going to uncover the hidden reasons behind why you're stuck in thinking mode, and more importantly, how you can unlock a new mindset, one that helps you stop overthinking and start doing. Ready to take control? Let's dive in. Rule number 1. Identify your procrastination triggers. We've all been there. You sit down, ready to tackle your to-do list, and before you know it, you're scrolling through social media, watching random videos, or endlessly browsing the web. Hours pass, and the work you promised yourself you'd do, it's still untouched. But here's the truth. Procrastination doesn't just happen. It's triggered. And to overcome it, you need to understand what's triggering your avoidance. In Stoic philosophy, the first step to mastering any challenge is self-awareness. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to know what stands in the way before trying to overcome it. Similarly, when it comes to procrastination, you need to identify the underlying reasons why you keep putting off the work. It's not always about laziness or lack of discipline. Sometimes it's fear, overwhelm, or perfectionism holding you back. So how do you start? The key is to pay attention to the patterns. When you sit down to work, what are the first things you do? Do you check your phone? Do you suddenly feel the urge to clean your desk or make a snack? These seemingly small actions are your procrastination triggers. They offer immediate comfort, but keep you from starting the work. Stoicism teaches us to face discomfort head-on, but to do that, you first need to recognize when you're running from it. Another powerful Stoic principle to apply here is the idea of facing the truth about yourself without judgment. Don't beat yourself up for procrastinating. Observe it calmly, as a Stoic would. For example, if you find yourself constantly checking your phone, dig deeper. Are you avoiding the task because it feels overwhelming? Are you scared you won't perform well? Seneca reminds us that he suffers more than necessary, who suffers before it is necessary. Often, we procrastinate because we're dreading an outcome that hasn't even happened yet. Once you've identified your procrastination triggers, you can begin to break the cycle. Start by addressing one small change. If checking your phone is your biggest distraction, put it in another room while you work. If it's the overwhelming size of the task, break it down into smaller, more manageable parts. The Stoics were all about simplifying, focusing on what's essential and eliminating distractions. When you know your triggers, you can start building systems to counter them. It's not about forcing yourself to work harder or longer. It's about working smarter. Recognize that procrastination is often an emotional response to discomfort, and the Stoic response is to face it with calm, steady courage. By doing so, you transform your mindset from avoidance to action. In the end, procrastination doesn't define you. It's just a habit you've built over time. And like any habit, it can be unlearned. As you become more aware of your procrastination triggers, you'll find it easier to take control of them, replacing avoidance with purposeful, focused action. The power lies in your hands to turn distraction into discipline, step by step, trigger by trigger. Rule number 2. Master the art of starting small. One of the biggest barriers to productivity is the feeling of being overwhelmed by the size of a task. You look at your project, assignment, or goal, and it feels like a mountain. The result? You freeze. You tell yourself you'll start later because right now it just feels too big, too hard. But here's the reality. Waiting for the perfect moment to start never works. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that greatness is built not through grand gestures, but through small, consistent actions. The solution to feeling overwhelmed is simple. Start small. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus believed that the hardest part of any task is simply beginning. He said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." In other words, don't think about how huge the task is. Just take the first step. It could be as simple as opening a document or writing one sentence. The key is to begin. Once you start, you'll often find that momentum follows. The hardest part of any task is getting over the initial resistance, and starting small removes that barrier. But why does this work? Psychologically, when you break a large task into smaller pieces, you shift your focus from the overwhelming whole to a manageable part. The Stoics were masters of this technique. They understood that progress is made through steady, consistent effort. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to focus only on the present moment. Confine yourself to the present. Instead of worrying about how much you still have to do, focus only on what you can do right now. Take a small step, no matter how insignificant it may seem. Starting small isn't about lowering your goals. It's about creating momentum. Once you take that first step, the next one becomes easier. You begin to build confidence, and before you know it, you've made significant progress. The Stoic approach is not to be paralyzed by the size of the challenge, but to chip away at it, one small action at a time. Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither are your accomplishments. For students or professionals dealing with large projects, the 2-minute rule can be incredibly effective. It's a concept that aligns with Stoic thinking. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. This helps you conquer the small tasks and build momentum for the larger ones. Similarly, when facing a big project, start with just 2 minutes of work. Often you'll find that once you've started, you'll continue far beyond those 2 minutes. Seneca reminds us that while we wait for life, life passes. Similarly, while you wait for the perfect conditions to start your work, time slips away. The Stoics knew that the perfect moment doesn't exist. There's only the present moment. Use it. Don't let the fear of a large task keep you from making progress. Start small, build momentum, and watch as those small actions accumulate into something great. By mastering the art of starting small, you're not only overcoming procrastination, but also building a habit of action. Over time, you'll find that starting becomes easier and you'll approach every task, no matter how large, with calm, focused determination. In the world of Stoicism, success is built on small, daily efforts, and that's where your power lies. Rule number 3. Build momentum through microtasks. One of the most effective ways to defeat procrastination is by building momentum. Momentum is powerful because once you start moving, it's much easier to keep going. In Stoic philosophy, this idea aligns perfectly with their belief in consistent, steady action over time. But how do you generate momentum when you feel stuck, overwhelmed, or simply unmotivated? The answer lies in breaking down your work into microtasks. Small, easily manageable actions that are so simple, they almost feel impossible to ignore. Picture this. You have a massive project to complete, and every time you think about it, your mind goes blank. You might feel paralyzed, thinking of all the steps and effort it will take. But here's a strategy straight out of the Stoic playbook. Don't think about the entire project. Instead, break it down into the smallest possible tasks. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Do what you can with what you have, where you are." The emphasis here is on doing what you can right now, not worrying about the full scope of the task. Let's say you're writing a paper. Instead of focusing on writing 10 pages, your first microtask could be as simple as opening a Word document or writing the title. That's it. By making the task so small, you remove the mental barrier of overwhelm. The Stoics were firm believers in the power of breaking challenges down into parts you can control. Once you complete one small action, it's easier to move to the next. You start to feel like you're accomplishing something, which builds confidence. This is momentum in action. Seneca also spoke about the importance of taking small steps to overcome big obstacles. He wrote, "By doing nothing, men learn to do ill." In other words, it's the act of doing something, anything, that prevents you from spiraling into inaction. Microtasks provide that first spark of action, and once you've begun, the larger tasks start to feel more approachable. You're no longer focused on the intimidating size of the project, but on completing one tiny piece at a time. Once you've started building momentum, you'll notice that the effort to continue becomes smaller. It's like pushing a car. The hardest part is getting it moving, but once it's rolling, it's much easier to keep it going. That's why breaking your work down into micro-tasks is so effective. Instead of thinking about the weight of the entire project, you only focus on completing the next small task. It might be drafting one sentence, reading one page, or outlining one paragraph. Each microtask moves you forward and brings you closer to your goal without feeling overwhelming. Epictetus frequently emphasized focusing on what is within our control. Microtasks are the perfect embodiment of that Stoic principle. They bring the overwhelming mass of work into the realm of the manageable. When you complete a microtask, you gain a small win, and these small wins stack up, leading to big progress over time. The beauty of this approach is that you'll often find yourself doing more than you originally planned, because the act of starting creates a desire to keep going. By building momentum through microtasks, you transform a daunting project into a series of easy wins. The Stoics believed that success wasn't about grand gestures, but about daily, consistent action. It's not about finishing the race in one sprint. It's about taking one step at a time, trusting that each step brings you closer to your goal. In the end, momentum becomes your greatest ally, and even the most intimidating projects start to feel achievable. Rule number 4. Create non-negotiable time blocks. One of the most effective ways to conquer procrastination is to establish non-negotiable time blocks for focused work. The Stoics were masters of self-discipline, and they understood that success comes not from waiting for the right moment, but from creating the conditions for progress, day after day, without excuse. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to stick to his duty, writing, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work, as a human being." This sentiment applies just as much to managing your time as it does to anything else. The concept of non-negotiable time blocks is simple but powerful. It means setting aside dedicated periods during your day where you commit to focusing on your work, no matter what distractions arise. During these time blocks, the only thing that matters is the task at hand. Everything else is secondary. The key here is consistency. Just as the Stoics believed in the power of small, deliberate actions over time, this practice helps you chip away at your tasks without letting procrastination slip through the cracks. To create these non-negotiable time blocks, start by choosing specific windows of time in your day where you're least likely to be interrupted. This could be early in the morning before the world wakes up, or later in the evening when things quiet down. The time itself doesn't matter as much as the commitment to it. Once you've chosen your time blocks, they become sacred. Non-negotiable periods of focus where you show up, regardless of how you feel in the moment. Epictetus taught that discipline isn't about forcing yourself to do what you love. It's about doing what's necessary, even when you don't feel like it. The Stoic idea of living according to nature means aligning your actions with your goals and values. Non-negotiable time blocks are an expression of this. You are setting the foundation for a disciplined life, where you don't allow distractions to derail your progress. You become the master of your time, rather than a victim of procrastination or external pressures. During these blocks, your phone goes on silent, social media is off limits, and distractions are minimized. You create an environment where focus is the default setting. The Stoics would call this preparing your mind for action. Seneca believed that external distractions were often a reflection of internal unrest. By creating structured time blocks, you bring both external and internal order to your life. One of the greatest benefits of non-negotiable time blocks is that they reduce the mental fatigue of decision-making. When you know that from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., for example, your only job is to focus on a particular task, you eliminate the need to decide whether or not to work. The decision has already been made. Now, you just execute. One of the greatest benefits of non-negotiable time blocks is that they reduce the mental fatigue of decision-making. When you know that from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m., for example, your only job is to focus on a particular task, you eliminate the need to decide whether or not to work. The decision has already been made. Now you just execute. The Stoics understood the power of reducing decision fatigue, allowing them to focus more energy on meaningful action rather than trivial choices. This structured approach brings peace and control to your day. It ensures that you make steady, reliable progress on your work without the constant back and forth of procrastination. By adhering to these time blocks, you create a routine of action, one that aligns with the Stoic principle of purposeful, intentional living. Over time, you'll find that these moments of focus accumulate, leading to significant progress on even the largest tasks. Rule number 5. Overcome the fear of imperfection. One of the most common reasons people procrastinate is the fear of imperfection. You sit down to start a task, and immediately your mind begins to race. What if it's not good enough? What if I make mistakes? What if I fail? This perfectionist mindset creates a mental barrier that stops you from taking action, because if you can't do it perfectly, why bother doing it at all, right? But here's where Stoicism comes in. The Stoics remind us that perfection isn't the goal, progress is. Epictetus famously said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This doesn't mean mastering every task perfectly. It means mastering your mind, especially when it's clouded by fear. The Stoic mindset teaches us to let go of the need for everything to be flawless. Instead, focus on what's within your control. The effort you put in, the discipline to start, and the resilience to keep going. Imagine you're about to start a project, but all you can think about is how it might turn out poorly. The Stoic approach would tell you to release your attachment to the outcome. You can't control how perfect the final product will be, but you can control how much effort you give it. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The same principle applies to your work. Focus on the process, not on achieving a perfect result. Perfectionism often leads to paralysis. You end up thinking so much about how perfect something should be that you never actually begin. The Stoics believe that true freedom comes from taking action, regardless of the fear of failure or imperfection. Seneca said, "While we wait for life, life passes." Waiting for the perfect moment to start, or for the perfect plan, often means you're wasting time that could be spent making progress. The irony is that progress itself is what leads to improvement, not waiting for the right conditions. When you release the need for everything to be perfect, you open yourself up to learning through doing. Mistakes are not the enemy. They're part of the process. The Stoics believe that every failure contains a lesson, and each mistake is an opportunity for growth. This is what Stoicism is all about, embracing imperfection as a natural part of life, and realizing that the pursuit of excellence is a journey, not a destination. One practical way to overcome the fear of imperfection is to set small, manageable goals that focus on completing the task rather than perfecting it. Instead of telling yourself, "I have to write the perfect essay," shift your mindset to, "I'm going to write a rough draft today." By focusing on completion rather than perfection, you remove the pressure and allow yourself the freedom to take action. Once the draft is done, you can always come back and refine it. The key is to start. At its core, Stoicism teaches us to embrace the reality of human imperfection. The pursuit of perfection is a futile chase, and the more you focus on progress, the more you'll realize that perfection isn't necessary for success. When you adopt this mindset, you'll find that taking action becomes easier, and the weight of procrastination begins to lift. You'll start to see that imperfection is not a flaw. It's a sign that you're learning, growing, and moving forward. Thanks for watching Stoic Affinity. If you found these Stoic strategies helpful, make sure to subscribe for more content that empowers you to live a more intentional life. Comment below with your thoughts on procrastination and share what action you're taking today. Let's grow together and turn those intentions into actions.